Hey everyone, Molgo Kirby here, and welcome to my Forest Colosseum final boss guide for Sol Heredit. We are going to cover which invocations to take for the boss, the basic mechanics of the boss, and some special mental tips that change everything for me when it comes to keeping track of a boss's cycle. First off, the invocations. Blasphemy, Dynamic Duo, Myopia, Reentry, Red Flag, Relentless don't affect final boss fight much or at all in some cases, so feel free to take them for the final boss fight. Avoid bees at all costs. It's doable with one bee, but a pain. 2 or 3 of them is a nightmare. Doom, if taking on the last wave, is fine. Unless you have a ton of supplies, you will probably run out of supplies before Doom activates. But if you have a ton of supplies, then avoid it if you can, so you can make more mistakes. Avoid Doom Scorpion. Repositioning a lot will mess you up. Frailty you can try to avoid. It's nice to be able to brew up to 115 HP, but realistically, you're going to be taking Frailty up to 80% most runs to avoid worse invocations. Avoid 60% HP at all costs unless very desperate, as this doesn't leave much room for error. Note, I did say reentry is free, just make sure you don't put permanent acid in the center of a room during waves. Solar Flare isn't too bad, avoid if you can, but it's not too horrible during the boss fight. Quartet is just one from your warrior at the start of boss, not too bad, but if you have volatility free, it will grief a tile. Totemic can be super annoying. It starts spawning at a certain HP threshold, I think, maybe half, and then it spawns on a timer from what I've seen. So you'll probably get 1 or 2 spawns, but you could get a lot more if your DPS is bad. Some runs it's barely noticeable, but if it spawns during the last 10%, it's horrible. If forced to take it, just remember that it spawns on southwest corner of boss. Volatility is basically free, just avoid boss exploding, and friendly warrior at start exploding if you have Quartet. Now for a basic attack cycle of a boss. The boss has 4 basic attacks, 2 spear attacks, and 2 shield attacks. We will call these Spear 1, Spear 2, Shield 1, and Shield 2. Spear 1 must be dodged by slipping back in the middle, or 2 from the middle, or as I like to call them, the middle and the edge tiles. Spear 2 must be dodged by stepping back 1 off from the middle, or as I like to call them, the side tiles. Note that if you go into the diagonal of a boss, it will rotate the attack pattern 45 degrees. This can feel confusing, so I'd avoid the situation, but it's the same pattern, where the middle is basically his diagonal corner. Shield 1, you step back 1 tile. Shield 2, you step back 2 tiles. Very simple. The boss will randomly choose between doing a shield and a spear attack. The boss will only use Spear 2 if a last attack was Spear 1. The same applies for Shield 2. It will only be used if a previous attack was Shield 1. So if a boss did 4 spear attacks in a row, it would be Spear 1, Spear 2, Spear 1, Spear 2. If a boss alternated Spear, Shield, it would be Spear 1, Shield 1, Spear 1, Shield 1. So whenever this boss switches from Spear to Shield or Shield to Spear, you know for sure it's the 1 variant coming up. The boss will also reset its basic attack cycle after the triple stab parry special, and also after the grab a piece of your armor parry special. When the boss spawns the yellow pools on the ground, this does not reset the attack cycle, so you must remember where it was at. The method that I recommend to make dodging a basic attack easier is a pre-move sort of method. Basically, by taking advantage of the overlap between the safe spots of the 4 basic attacks, I only use 3 different tiles for dodging. I know where I'm going to move based on the previous attack, so I don't even need to wait and see if the next attack will be a shield or a spear. I already know where to go, and I just need to always remember what the previous attack was. Not having to constantly react makes it much easier to dodge. The 3 tiles I use are stepping 1 back in the middle, stepping 2 back in the middle, and stepping 1 back in the side. We call these M1, M2, and side. Remember, the edge tiles work the same as middle tiles, so when the yellow pools block you, you can use that as well for middle dodges. Basically, here's the method. If a boss is at the start of a cycle, so the boss either reset its attack cycle, or it just did Shield 2 or Spear 2 as the previous attack, which basically put the boss in the same state as resetting its attack cycle, then you always move to M1 on the next attack. If a boss did Spear 1, then you move to the side on the next attack. If a boss did Shield 1, then you move to M2 on the next attack. By doing this pattern, you can move without needing to react to whether a boss's next move is Shield or Spear. Note that sometimes I do deviate from the pattern and react, especially if dealing with other mechanics like lasers and yellow pools, or if running around the boss. Just go with what feels natural in the moment. Try your best to return to the boss and keep it from moving so you don't get backed into a wall. If you get backed into a wall, be proactive about repositioning yourself early. Now, I've explained the method, but it's still quite tricky to pull off in practice and not get confused. So here's some special tips that were a difference maker in mastering this boss for me. First of all, pulling up a video of someone doing the boss and practicing in your client can be really good. Just use tile markers to draw a 5x5 boss on the ground. Another option is a simulation. I'll link it in the description. If you go here, you can practice a boss. Note, last time I checked it out, it didn't show a special diagonal pattern for spears, so just don't try to go to the diagonal and AFK as a solve. This of course only helps so much, so here's the secret strats that 9 out of 10 gold sellers don't want you to know. First of all, don't call out what you're doing out loud. At least for me, I try this to help me remember what the next move is, and I would often confuse myself and do the opposite of what I'm supposed to do. Sometimes multiple times in a row. Just stay silent and focus on the boss fight, and trust your brain to remember. Second, game sounds are huge. The spear has a very distinct noise that will really linger in your head. Mentally be aware of this and pay attention to it, as this audio cue makes it so much easier to remember that a spear just happened. Let your visual senses be used for focusing on other things. In comparison, the shield is very quiet at the start and has some sound at the very end. Very distinct from a spear, so whichever sound was last heard should linger in your head very clearly as Val's last attack that just happened. This audio cue trick was massive for me to mentally keep track of a cycle. Another tip, your current position can help you remember what you're supposed to do. The biggest one is if you're on the side tile after dodging an attack, but instead of an attack, the boss did the phase transition where it spawns yellow pools, so it didn't actually attack yet, but you already pre-moved there. It's easy to forget where you are in the cycle after the yellow pool spawn, since the boss doesn't attack for a while. But if you're on a side tile, you know you were meant to do a side dodge, so you can just do another side dodge now that the boss is doing the attack that you were pre-moving for earlier. Another tip, I often see people mess up on spear, and then they get the spear like 3 times in a row, and they mess up like 3 times in a row because we're panicking, and we try to fix it by going to a new tile. But if they did spear 2 when the boss did spear 1, and now the boss does spear again, so it actually is spear 2 now, that means you should actually go to spear 2. Basically the same tile you just took damage from a second ago, even if your brain is scared to go to that tile again, because you just took damage from it. This is just a common panic reaction I've seen many people, including myself, have, so I just wanted to mention this. Being aware of this mental trap will hopefully help you avoid making this mistake. Now for our special attacks, first of all, the boss will say some dialogue and spawn yellow pools throughout the fight at 90%, 75%, 50%, 25%, and 10%. Try to react quickly, it doesn't give you much time to dodge, but it also doesn't do that much damage when you get hit by the yellow pools spawning initially. If the yellow pools block your tiles, move the boss or move yourself around the boss so you can attack the boss and dodge the attacks without being griefed by the pools. Remember, it's okay to miss ticks and stop attacking to set things up. The boss will spawn a new yellow cube at 90%, 75%, 50%, and 25%. The yellow cubes will occasionally stop moving and then do a laser attack. They tend to do this a couple ticks after the start animation of a boss attack. They seem to have a cooldown of about 30 ticks or 4 boss attacks usually, but sometimes it's a much longer, like 40 ticks or 6+ boss attacks. During Enrage Phase, they seem to fire off every second boss attack, or around every 7 seconds, but this also might vary potentially. These lasers are safe until the tick they explode, and can hit 70+, so avoid at all costs. 4 ticks after it keeps initially fire the laser, they make a small explosion sound and send a surge. This is the danger tick as seen here. The boss's spear attack is 7 tick speed, and the shield attack is 6 tick speed. They become 1 tick faster at 75%, so 6 tick speed spear, 5 tick speed shield. The attack animation itself is the same, the boss just doesn't AFK between hits anymore. The boss's triple parry stab special unlocks at 90%, at least I've never really seen it use it before then, I could be wrong. If your prayer is up on the tick before the danger tick, the boss will turn it off and prevent you from turning it on for that stab, so make sure to turn melee prayer off between stabs. You want to turn your melee prayer up right on the tick the boss stabs you, and then turn it off right before the next stab to do it again. The animation is 4 ticks long for the first stab, 3 for the second, 3 for the third, so 4 free. You want to flick melee prayer on the last tick. Treat it like a Dark Souls boss, where you're tempted to parry early, but you gotta hold out and wait longer than you think. I recommend you practice by putting up a clip of me doing the boss and try to time the flicks in your own client. The flashing green-red box in my client can help you show exactly when the tick is updating for the tick the boss stabs you and the tick that I turn on my melee prayer. Note, the first stab animation feels short since you waste time reacting to the fact it started the special. The second stab feels very quick, shortly after a boss brings the spear up. The third one really milks it, so be patient on that one. Note, at 50% when the boss says you can't win, it will do an alternate version of a special attack. where the animations are 4-3-4 instead of 4-3-3, so the last hit is 1 tick longer before he stabs. Practice this timing too, and be ready for once the boss is below 50% for the boss to do that delayed special for any specials it does. The boss grab parry special seems to unlock at 75% from what I've seen. Starting from when the text appears, it's a 4-tick animation where on the 4th tick, the boss will reach his arm out to grab you. You want to click on this 4th tick when the boss reaches towards you so you can take your armor off on the 5th tick. This will grant the perfect parry and you'll deal a max hit on your next attack on the boss. If nervous, you can just take it off early to at least avoid the damage, while missing out on the max damage buff. You can see from a clip, the window for me to click to take off my armor for a perfect parry is when the green-red tick counter box is red. Once again, I recommend watching my clip and trying to time the takeoff in your own client. The ticks may be out of sync a little bit, be aware when doing this practice method with watching a clip. During the last 10%, in addition to lasers firing much faster, it also spawns yellow pools randomly, so DPSing this part is nice. You can double claw spec this part if you wish. That's all for the guide. I will include a link to a video where you can watch 2 full examples of a boss fight with game sounds without interruption. I also have other videos on my channel like my budget run, which shows a much longer version of a boss fight, since my DPS is so bad. Feel free to check those out too. Thanks for watching, I've been Molo Kirby, and you got this.